But will I take those lessons back home with me and remember those for years and years to come?
Hi everyone. All right, welcome to this place if you're new here, and welcome back if you're returning. So we're recording this in February 2024, according to the Gregorian calendar anyhow. So I just wanted to give a few updates. The premise of this video is about the year of the wood dragon, which is lining up in February. It's the Eastern New Year, right? And we'll be talking mostly about that, but I did want to give a few updates for this February time. Firstly, I just wanted to say Happy New Year and thank you. I didn't mention it all the way through on January, but we've been doing this 7 years, some of us all the way through, and that's so rad. And whenever you've arrived in this place, I'm grateful, and I'm happy that we're all able to be here. It's such a creative space. It's a blessing beyond words to be here now, you know, and so I just wanted to say that. Thank you for your support. Speaking of support, there's also been quite a few. I have a Patreon page. I don't generally share that with everyone because I have this feeling like, oh, well, if people are meant to find something and they're seeking it, then they will find it. They don't need another person necessarily to tell them to go to these places. But on the other hand, I suppose if you don't tell people things, then they don't know, right? So we also have a private community through the forum of Patreon. It's like a little community garden, basically, is what I like to call it. And a lot of you have been good, many handfuls. That's pretty awesome, actually, of folks have been a part of that since it's been created. But I created a new tier over there. So we have 3 tiers at this point in time. There's the Sacred Supporter, which is basically a place to, as a premise, people were asking, you know, how can I support this? I want to support you. And so due to that, I answered the question by creating a space for that to happen. So the Sacred Supporter is a foundational support of the work being done here. That tier also receives a full moon reading. We took a poll, and it seems to be most folks in that space, really, that little garden, that part of the garden, really enjoys the full moon. So we do a full moon reading every month. I've also decided to extend the support there a little because that space is actually quite active. And so that also receives we do a Motivational Mondays, which is just like kind of like a weekly check-in in a sort of a collective sense. And that usually comes around the new moon. Then the second tier is the Timeless Traveler, which is where most of the readings sit. There's extras there. We have animal medicine, herbal astrology, astrology classes. We've done a few mythological ones, and you know, interesting, weird whiteboard sessions, like the Shadow Trinity was really cool. All the ascendant expressions through the animals are over there. It just kind of is a little looser of a place, but it's basically access to all the readings. And that also includes what has been previously through both those tiers. So there's about 500 videos there now for you to reference or to use as a tool. Then I also created a 3rd tier recently called the Wild Walkers. This tier basically gets access to everything, all previous tiers. It also, if one desires, receives like a welcome art card, a postcard that I'll make individually for each person. That tier is also like an extra extension in ways of supporting, which the undercurrent of that is I'm actually creating I'm in the process of creating a deck, which I'd like to launch later this year. So that's also given me space and time to be able to work through that. So I just wanted to mention, if you've already been a part of this place, I thank you so deeply and dearly. And if you'd like to explore or check that out, please feel free. It's a resource. So we have all that bits. Let's start at 5:30 for Wooden Dragon. Oh, one more thing. Actually, I guess we'll start at 6. Did I mention, sorry, I had it all in my head and on my notes, that February readings, personal private readings, are closed this season. My plate's just really full, blessedly so. I'm very grateful. It's also winter where I am. I'm in a new environment, so I'm trying to allocate to that correctly in my body so that we have energy as we move forward. This is very suiting to the Wood Dragon too. But yeah, they'll probably open. I'm feeling like the beginning of March, like getting into Pisces season, which I love working with Pisces energy people as well as that time frame. And if you'd like to book now for then, I suppose you can. But if you want to, but usually it's about the beginning of each month is when we book, and then when it's full, and then we roll over the next session the next month, just so you're aware. Okay, so I guess we're going to take a minute and breathe before we get into Dragon. Why don't you try to visualize a dragon, like what does it look like? But also, this is the year of the Wooden Dragon. So maybe what tree are you? What tree do you see? What is that what color is the dragon? Okay, so shall we jump in? All right, Wooden Dragon. This is pretty rad. I'm liking the energy of this. So this is represented by the Chinese New Year, right? They follow a lunar calendar, primarily. So we're looking at February 10th until February 2024 till February 2025. The last time there was a Wooden Dragon was 1964. So you could think about this gap. A lot of us, I don't even think we're born at that time, right? And those of you who were, thank you for being our spectacular elders. All your wisdom is so appreciated. Okay, so let's touch on this. So each dragon has, we work through, I guess they work through, we're just learning, and this isn't my natural heritage, this medicine, so we're learning. That's fine. So it seems to be that the elements per animal in the Chinese zodiac shift every 12 years. So it connects to some kind of Jupiter cycle, which is very suiting as we move forward into the astrology of this. Dragon is the only mythological animal, although some would, right, just like the unicorn, like it's not that far removed to imagine a dragon being real, right? We have little lizards, we have baby dragons, right? So those, let's look at it. Some children will be born in this year, right? Those that are born in this year, which also represents what will be growing over this year, will create an energy that's kind of full of drive. And this can represent some really big kind of dreamer energy, you know, like, hey, I really want to make a big difference in the world. I want to make something big, right? And what's neat about the Wood Dragon is it really connects to creativity a lot. And so that would be the means, and I guess the correct means, because we can go about things different ways, but taking a creative look at how to make the changes happen that you want, that is very much available. I guess in relation to the children born this year as well, I suppose that may loop around to creating some really amazing artists. We're kind of coming up on a larger cycle of the classical musicians that we all reference, Beethoven, Mozart, etc., as well as, I guess, we're getting into now these different kinds of artists, maybe more like Da Vinci, things like that. It's coming into, right, we can use it in inventive ways. So there's that. I guess you'd probably want to perhaps reference your own Chinese zodiac animal, and zodiac means wheel of animals to the Greek, right? But yeah, maybe reference, right, like what one you are, and maybe what's the story between your animal and the dragon. Now, of course, remember each tier, if you will, has a different element attached to it. But yeah, wood and dragon. So let's talk about wood. Wood seemingly is, the notes I have here, I wrote vitality, creativity, and steadiness. Now remember, the creativity is enhanced to create change, right? It's not creating destruction, it's creating, I guess it's invention, more of invention, right? Now, in ways of wood, if you think about it, especially in ways of creativity, like how many things can you make out of wood, right? How many things are made out of wood? Maybe look around you, like what's made out of wood around you. Perhaps this could give, I don't know, like a different mindset on what's really possible, right? It's the same thing, but depending on how the tools we use in relation to that, the ideas and the visions that we have about what we're trying to create, well, that's possible, right? So in a positive, this next year in Ways of the Wood Dragon is about honesty. There's kind of like these three tiers in relation to this. So we have honesty, generosity, and calmness, or peace, if you will. Those are big ones. There's also success, intelligence, and honor. And then I wrote down ambitious, confident, and self-determined. Now, as this is tree, and I'm jumping ahead in my notes. I was trying to go in order, but trees generally grow slowly, right? So the ambitious nature of this year, some years, for instance, when you look at the rings of a tree, sometimes the years are a lot wider, right? A lot more can grow in that time. I guess it depends on the root of the tree and its environment, right? That'll make where something lives, and how that feels, and we'll get more into each of us as trees, because that's a big part of this too. Now the undercurrent, I suppose, is we're rejuvenating the beginnings of things. And this could very much be a really, really great year for creating the foundation for something in ways of long-term, the long-term picture, the bigger picture. And whatever you deem success to be, like perhaps it's the accomplishment of it, that as this is found, I wrote down the word foundational that seemed to sit correctly. It's not that we say the foundation has already been created. This year, you would build the house on top of the foundation. Say some of you, it's just the land. You're in the stage of the land. You're like, oh, I can do anything with this, right? It's kind of untouched. Would be like, all right, where would you like to put your foundation? Perhaps even digging that hole and creating it. Then maybe next year would be on top of that. So there's something Saturnian, as it is trees, right? If a tree grows too quickly, then it's going to not be that strong, right? So something to think about there. Let's see what else we have. Oh, so a question. A question during this year would be, because there's going to be, if we keep it in the positive, then the question would be, that we might want to ask ourselves is, how can I make the world a better place peacefully? Now, in ways of changing the world, because that is kind of an undercurrent of Wood and Dragon, it's because there's a Jupiterian aspect to it, right? The 12-year cycles. So in that sense, we have to remember that change in certain ways through this, especially if it's in a much wider context, you're wanting to, whatever you're looking at here, your vision or vantage point, then remember that growth, you want to think about a tree with that, right? If you just don't like something and then cut down the tree, well, that doesn't always solve the problem, right? So remember that, I keep saying it, think of the tree, right? Because wood, seemingly as an element from what I researched with the Chinese medicine, is an active energy. So therefore it has some masculine property. And so we're talking about movement and progress, which progress is forward energy, right? It's just forward. It doesn't have to be big highs, big lows. It's just, what's important is no matter what the path is, it is forward. And I'm seeing like like the dragon, like this, right? Dragon usually actually, and I'm seeing it like at a parade, right? It's kind of like up, down, up, down, up, down, but it has a flow to it. And we'll talk, this is interesting, this is happening in Aquarius time. It kind of mimics that glyph. So, and the movement and progress is really beautiful to me, because it showed me that this is also, as much as it is something you want to achieve in the outside world, right? How do we make the world a better place? It's also very much like internal work. So, for instance, those that are just stepping into, say, like shadow work in and of themselves, or a level that's becoming more prominent, say, in a collective way, this is really beautiful. It could definitely release a lot of blockages in ways of shadow work, because that internal change, if you will, or growth, is representative to removing those blocks, so that the access, like the energy that's accessed behind it, I'm seeing like a big boulder in front of a cave. It's like we move that, we get access to this active energy versus something that was stagnant and blocked. So any kind of shadow work that you are doing or have done is, I guess it'll let itself be known through when frustration and stress come in, because there is a negative to dragon, like everything, right? The yin and yang is black and white. Is anger, frustration, stress, right? Because when wood is blocked or is too rigid, it becomes too hard. It becomes unbendable, right? And speaking of wood, let's go into, actually I'd like to take a note, 1940. Actually, want to take a minute to be silent. I'm going to start at 20 with the trees. Okay. So this whole situation inspired me to think about is it called the Ogham? The Druid tree alphabet. Really fascinating stuff. Robert Graves writes in great depth and poeticism of this. Another whole story. But so to the Druids, which was seemingly around 1000 BC, each season or each portion of the sky, I guess, in the zodiacal sense, to when things are created, had a tree associated with them. So let's start with Capricorn. I feel like this is important. Saturn is also, Jupiter and Saturn are kind of two major players in relation to this year also. So if you're born between the 24th of December to the 1st of January, from the 24th of December to the 20th of January, you are a birch tree. So it's achiever energy. And specifically, I didn't go, well, let's stay on point. Birch is interesting as the Saturnian energy because it purifies as well as safeguards against negative energy. So maybe you want to find where there are just birch trees around you. They tend to grow together also, right? They prefer to be in a bit of, they're not singular energy. So in ways of being the achiever, the birch, the way to achieve, I suppose, is some kind of collaboration energy. Oh, cool. We just talked about this on Patreon. Nice, on the weekly readings. Okay. I'm not going to go too much in depth to each tree, to each one. We could perhaps do that separately, or you can do your own research. So moving along. January 21st, if you were born January 21st until the 17th of February, you were the rowan tree. So averagely, this is Aquarius energy. And I don't know if I mentioned, but yeah, birch, Capricorn. Rowan tree. This is also very protective. To me, this tree also connects to love. So something to sit with. Now, if you're born from February 18th until March 17th, this is the ash tree. So we're looking at, it's actually like, yeah, mostly Pisces, we'll take it, mostly Pisces energy. So this is the enchanter. And ash is interesting because ash green or ash brown, right, is fit for a king with a crown. So that's beautiful to me. I love ash, is a very powerful deciduous tree. Go Pisces. Okay, then we have the 18th of March until the 14th of April. So Aries energy basically is the alder tree. Alder has some pretty magical properties, but I don't know all the details of that. I guess you'd have to know what your own magic is. And to some, this is the trailblazer. So there's a lot of inventive energy. And actually, this wooden dragon year, that time frame, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere, is that's when things really start blooming. Okay, then we have April 15th until May 12th, so Taurus energy averagely. Kind of Taurus Aries is the willow tree. And I thought this one was interesting. We can call this the observer. Taurus had an old reading a long time ago that talked about bending, right? not being the stiff tree, but being able to bend, you know, creating that flexibility. So something to sit with. Willows also need a lot of water, right? They're an indication that water is around. So maybe you'll see one, or what are your experiences with them? Then we have May 13th till the 9th of June. Averagely Gemini energy. This is the hawthorn tree. Hawthorn has thorns on it, so it has an undercurrent of Mars energy. But it's very good for heart health. It's very, very good for heart health. So hawthorn tree, averagely Gemini. So Taurus Gemini. Then we have June 10th until July 7th. This is Gemini, Cancer energy. We're looking at the oak tree, which is the stabilizer. That's something important, the oak tree, to connect to Cancer energy. Right, that's a very slow growth, right? A little acorn can turn into this huge tree that lives for generations, right? Generations upon generations. I heard that's a difference you can make in the world, especially when you love yourself and everyone else. So July 8th until August 4th. So Leo, Cancer Leo energy. We have the holly tree. This one's interesting to me. It's the only tree that I believe doesn't lose its leaves. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it depends on the region. But from what I've seen, it doesn't lose its leaves. That also grows in a grove, kind of like birch trees. They really enjoy being around one another and support one another. The bark is beautiful also. As far as I remember, it kind of sheds itself and shows these different layers all at once. It's kind of like, it's always like, I don't know if you've ever been in a holly like grove, but there's something really, really magical about it. Okay, moving along. Holly, back up. Holly is also very protective. That's also ruled by Mars because it has points to it. Now, August 5th until September 1st, which gives a Leo Virgo energy, is the hazel. Some call this the knower. So if there's a hazel tree around you, I don't know if that technically would be, I didn't dig into this one, but I was curious whether this is actually like a hazelnut tree. Because, you know, that's the thing, is we don't realize sometimes that, you know, like the holly, the hazel, we could just keep it in like a small bush form, right? We can kind of miniaturize it if we want, characterize it, you know, sculpt it as we wish. But what happens when we just let it grow? It actually can become quite big, right? A bush, some things that people only see, but like they only know it as this small thing. If it was left to its own devices, it actually becomes like something so much bigger. Okay. Then we have, September 2nd until the 29th of September. So Virgo energy more fully. You are the vine, according to the Druids, the equalizer. Vines can kind of grow anywhere, but vines generally will grow upon trees. So there's also very much a collective energy with this one too. Something to sit on. Maybe weaving would also be important. Vesta probably attaches to this one too. Interesting. Okay, so from September 30th until October 27th. So we're looking at Libra energy is the ivy. And this is known as the survivor, right? Ivy can kind of grow anywhere. Usually it does grow around and or beneath. It's like a ground cover, right? So it helps that which is around it not be overwhelmed by that which is outside of it. I suppose as ivy also spreads out, something to note, perhaps this year, and as we're discussing it this way, perhaps this spreading out energy of the ivy, why not spread out from where you are? But I would take where you are and spread out versus trying to like dig up a piece of ivy and then like put it somewhere else. And then, because wherever it is, it's probably somewhat in its natural environment, right? When we, again, allow things to be. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, let's move along. So October 28th until November 24th. So Scorpio energy, averagely. You are the reed. I thought that was pretty rad because then you actually get your water. And this was labeled as the leader, which is actually very suiting. And ways of using this energy positively, right? Because the reed can sway. You can make so many things out of reed. You can make baskets. You can make clothes. You can eat the reed. Like, there's so many. It shows you so many things, So something to think about. Scorpio energy. And lastly, we have November 25th until December 25th. So Sagittarius energy is the elder tree, and some call this the scholar. The elder is actually, well, it's interesting, it's called the elder tree too. This is the one tree that I know that you're not supposed to burn. It's actually, it can kill you, the smoke of the elder tree. It's poisonous. Certain holly is also poisonous. It's interesting, Leo and Sag, but because with elder you have to know what part of, like, when you look at something as a whole, you can't actually use all the parts, but there's some parts that are poisonous and you have to be like, nope, or there's some ways you just can't use what it is, right? You can carve the wood, but you can't burn it, right? You can eat the certain parts of it, right, but not others. So it's really, I guess that's why it has the scholar. It's like you have to know, right? Rhubarb, you can't eat all of rhubarb, right? So half of rhubarb is poison. So things to think about there in ways of your trees. Okay, so now if we think about a tree too, trees are generally pretty tall, right? And even if you were the vine or the ivy, you can climb the trees, right? And get a different vantage point. If you were the reed, usually there's space around you that's needed, right? There's some kind of reflection. You can receive your awareness through your reflection. Scorpio energy. So speaking of that, let's talk about now flexibility. Again, the dragon, whether it's a water dragon, whether it's fire dragon, it's flying, even if it's an earth dragon, it still has wings, if that's more of its element. It's really cool to see, like, I keep seeing like a tree that ends up growing its wings, and then that tree in and of itself becomes like the dragon. It would be like the dragon, the birch dragon, right? Or the rowan dragon, etc. Interesting. I guess we could make one with with a wood. Huh. All right, moving along. Just different ideas, different ideas. So flexibility is so important here, because if we're too rigid in what we're trying to grow or change or whatever, meaning like, I need this to happen now, or, you know, like, I want to, because especially with Pluto and Aquarius, that whole like, I want to change the world, I want to change society. Like, again, if we just cut down the tree, then there, if you've ever seen logged land, it does not look good. It's a mess. It's a mess, and it really messes with the ecological. You know, it's messing with the system. So small personal choices in your everyday world. You know, what are the other dragons you're hanging out with? That's important to be, because I think it's this yin yang, right? If we're too rigid, then something's gonna break, it's gonna snap, it's gonna splinter, right? If it's too loose and we don't really have at least some kind of vision or plan around, you know, confidence around the decision making, these things are a part of this, right? But to when exactly, well, inshallah, right? Inshallah. Because we do want a little bit of a control of the reins, right? Especially if we're riding the dragon, right? Because if it's too loose and we're like, da-da-da, nothing really grows if a plant's just flopped over and doesn't have enough dirt and, you know, the roots are exposed and all this stuff. It's like, it doesn't have a stability to it, right? It needs to be, things need to be rooted in the right way and be able to drain their, you know, retain and then drain their water accordingly. So we're really looking for this middle ground. So cardinal energy, the way I saw this was the rigidity could be fixed stuff and fixed places in our map. The too looses are mutable. The kind of in between good, the middle path, I guess, would be cardinal energy. So Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. Perhaps paying attention to that, because they also represent movement and progression. Forward energy, regardless again of the up and down, is represented by our cardinal places. Now, let's see here. Let's touch on, I'd like to touch on a little bit of medical astrology, if you don't mind. Of course, always do your own research. You know, this is just purely we're educational. We're just talking and learning. And different people have different perspectives, but I have a few notes on it, and I have a few pages of notes, and I thought it would be interesting. So I wanted to look over in ways of Chinese medicine, like what wood represents, again, medicinally, and in connection to the dragon. And it seems to be that the liver and the gallbladder are the two organs that are being emphasized during this year. So liver is ruled over by Jupiter. So this is our happiness, right? Jupiter also represents men, like our husbands, the men in our life. So it's a positive masculine Jupiter, right? So the men in your life, the men in our life in general, are going to also be significant. How we feel about men, the good men that we have in our lives, right? That'll be a bit indicative also. Maybe it's just an example, right? Because remember, dragon is active, and which therefore makes it masculine. So if for some reason people don't trust men, or they don't trust there's issues there, then there will need because there's that's toxicity, right? When we judge something in such a wide way, like, oh, people that get mad at men, or people get mad at women, or people get mad at cops, or people get mad at whatever. It's just like, people are people. And who are the people that you interact with, right? Because if we're trying to make the world a better place, the world, which seems huge, right? Jupiter, like the whole world, then it's our world, meaning what we can touch, right, is literally our universe, right? Wherever we go, that's our little world. So thinking in these terms, helpful. Now, I don't know who stated this, but I thought it was interesting, where someone said that the liver is the grand architect, quote unquote, for vision of our future. So Jupiter in our map seemingly will be, there will be I guess it could be helpful to look at that, or how that's being aspected transitorily. So sobriety, as the liver is going to, it filters our toxins, right? Sorry, my notes were a little, I was really going to town earlier. So the grand architect for the vision of the future. This is in a general sense also. So I guess if we think about it, there could be an expansion of alcoholism in the world, but it would be due to depression, right? Or anger. So any kind of sobriety over this next year, especially in ways of alcohol, not that something I feel like has to be completely, this isn't like straight edge energy necessarily, but at least where, I saw someone cheersing with like a little champagne or a little bit of something because someone just bought a house, or someone just bought a piece of land, or someone just got a job. Like, when it's in a positive celebratory sense, then the alcohol is well, I guess that does something else versus like cheersing to sorrow, because someone doesn't want to drink alone, Interesting. So if you've recently become sober too, I suppose there could be a test of that. You could also be reaching a new stage of awareness, as Jupiter does represent our happiness. What is a happy future to you? And again, I see starting your small, think about, again, the rings of the tree, the whole tree itself is earth. It's like, okay, we'll start with your little circle, right? How does that feel, and what do you want that to look like now? Now, as this does filter toxins, I'd say fasting over this year could be very helpful. I don't know if this is particularly like during religious expressions of that, or if you just want to be a little bit more religious, which meaning you have structure around when you do things. Maybe it is monthly with the moon. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to, just drink water until noon. It doesn't have to be these like extreme, because we're not supposed to be extreme with Saturn and Jupiter. That's why Saturn's with Jupiter, is to curb that extreme behavior, because again, generally extremity is going to create impulsive nature, which causes one to make decisions emotionally versus with again that calm in ourselves, right? Now let's keep going with the liver for a second. Liver, to a lot of different schools of thought, relate it to our fifth house. Also, the fifth, we'll get a little deeper here. The fifth and ninth house ruler in your map is So therefore, we also have like an undercurrent of Sagittarius as this liver. If for some reason those are in conjunction with Saturn, Mars, the South Node or the North Node, there will be sort of like liver things that might come up. So just liver health in general. For instance, dandelion root is awesome for even a healthy liver, but particularly if anyone's trying to quit alcohol or just release, again, toxins from this place. There are other things too, but that one's, to me, is the most natural and the most gentle, right? Children can take dandelions. It's easy. You can eat the whole plant. There's nothing poisonous, right, about a dandelion. So that can be natally or transitorily. So something to think about there. I'd also say if there's, if you have a really fatty diet, if you enjoy that, everybody is a little bit different. Some people need a little bit more fat because they process faster, right? But in a general sense, I would say that reducing that, our fat intake, will also help because the liver could also expand its fat around it, which will interrupt with the process of cleansing, right, our toxins out. So, oh, another interesting thing, make sure I wrote that down right. Yeah, Jupiter also rules over our astral body, but we'll get into that. I'd like to close with that part. So the other organ, gallbladder. Let me take note here. Gallbladder is our second organ. This is a big one. Most people, I don't think, pay attention to this. As far as I know, it's quite small in our body, but it's ruled by Mars, but also connected to as a foundation, like Saturn energy, which both connect to our bile, and our Mars, particularly our blood, which, remember, our blood is what determines our happiness. That's why, for instance, with alcohol, it poisons the blood, and usually people drink because they're not happy, right? Usually people do something to try to soften something because they're unhappy. Interesting. So, according to some, the gallbladder, in ways of like a spiritual lesson of it, is, and this is interesting because I think that goes along with that body graph. It does the different organs in your body too, but they say some say the gallbladder connects and is the center for our ability to be able to make decisions. And this year very much is vision, the plan, and the decisions to make that happen, right? So in relation to that, because it is Mars and Saturn, we want to judge wisely, right? And for instance, if our body is toxic, whether that's old emotional blockages, some kind of addiction to something, depression, what have you, then the decisions are not going to be being made again from that calm, peaceful, right? Jupiter is our faith. Now, as the undercurrent in a negative sense is anger, frustration, again, like aggression, not assertion, but aggression. Because anger is going to also sit with the gallbladder. And then I saw the words no growth. And then we go back into that positive masculine, right? I am doing this because I know this is good for me. I know I'm doing, and I know that in and of itself is going to do good to wherever I go, right? It's an awareness of again, I guess, these smaller circles. But we all deal with anger. We all deal with grief. We all go through all the emotions, have and will, perhaps are. So if anger happens to be a thing, the gallbladder would be something to focus on. Now, generally, anger, in my opinion, anger will stem from sadness, or which is in essence grief or guilt. But particularly when it comes to grieving, because all humans have to go through this, right? Again, at some point in our lives, and will. It's just a part of the human situation. Then we're talking about the lungs. So breath work during this year, right? If we think about the dragon, there's even dragon's breath, which is kind of a fast-paced breathing. I almost feel like it would be more slower. So breath work could really help. Again, if you have, if there's, you're dealing with anger, you're dealing with grief, some breathing exercises. Again, square breathing is really awesome, because anger usually, again, it also can come through anxiety. So square breathing, I'll include something about that below. Very helpful. The Navy SEALs do it to keep calm. Any kind of soft, I feel like, movement in the body too, right? You don't have to be particularly in any kind of shape to do soft yoga, and this doesn't mean joining some you don't have to join some expensive class. You don't got to get all the outfit and all the tools and whatever, unless you want to, but really just breathing and stretching, daily, becoming more conscious in our body, I guess, is what is part of what is going to give us our wings, right? Again, that confidence, right? And using that confident, self-determined energy in an honorable way. Another thing that's helpful for gallbladder, again, like dandelion root, it doesn't have to be in a bad position, right? We don't have to wait until something's broken to give it attention. And that's actually usually why I think a lot of people, most of society, it has gone away from herbal. Well, there's multiple reasons, but one of them being, I think a lot of people are not necessarily into herbal medicine, is because they, again, wait until something is so bad that, no, this soft, because herbal medicine is generally quite soft, right? So it's premeditative, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to keep my liver clean. I'm going to keep my gallbladder functioning. What do these things need, right, that we can't even see, which is interesting. But peppermint tea is good for the gallbladder. Magnesium is also helpful. Any of you particularly that are in a winter place and you happen to take synthetic vitamin D, sometimes it's in the milk or the orange juice, what have you, or if you take a supplement, remember that clings to the magnesium cell, and you generally urinate out. It will deplete your magnesium, and we only hold a very small amount of magnesium in our bodies. And when we're lacking it, our joints are stiff. We can feel anxious, things like that. So maybe it's soaking your feet in an Epsom salt bath and drinking a cup of peppermint tea, like, for 5 minutes a week, right? I'm sure we can make time for that, right? How much TV do we watch, right? How much do we stare at the screen? So gallbladder also connects to the health of our muscle and our connective tissue. So in that sense, this kind of emphasizes this yogic, even very mild bending, right? Remember, when we sleep at night, that's why it's so important, especially to stretch during when you wake up, is we create these little webs in between our ligaments and our muscles, and we need to move them around. They look like cobwebs. It's like when we move them around, we create heat. It's like fat sort of melting, that you can imagine it that way. And perhaps even some stretching in relation to, like, where those two organs are. It's kind of at our hips. If you put your hands above your hips there, it's just bending into that, right? Giving that attention, maybe rubbing those places, right? We forget sometimes all the magic that keeps everything alive, again, that we can't even see. Now, lastly, I thought this was so cool. So, according to H.L. Cornell, which was an amazing astrologer, and printed this, he wrote this book in 1933 called The Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology. It's amazing. It's absolutely stunning. He's genius. And he actually put it out on the 3rd of February, so I'm guessing during that year, it was probably the Chinese New Year too, very suiting. But he says that Jupiter rules over the astral body also. Particularly the astral body being, according to Mr. Cornell, was our breath, our lungs, our liver, and our blood. So again, Gemini, we have Mercury, well, I guess, yeah, Gemini, Sag, Pisces, Aries, and Scorpio rule over our astral body in a general sense, according to Mr. Cornell, which I thought was fascinating. But again, the breath work, the lungs, I feel like this year it's so helpful, right? Because when we're conscious of our own breath, stress, it doesn't really exist. You know, it actually can teach us, you know, like, oh, I just calmed myself down. Or, oh, I just caught myself why am I holding my breath, right? Things like that. So, and liver and blood is interesting too. I suppose to help the gallbladder, side note, I suppose in ways of enhancing the gallbladder as it rules over, again, our bile, which the liver detoxifies in our body, which, remember, there's yellow bile and black bile. Black bile is melancholic, so when we are depressed, we're melancholy, right? We're melancholic. And then yellow bile is more choleric. But either way, as the blood goes through the kidneys, I guess Libra is a little bit a part of that too. Or at very least, the balancing kidney health, I guess, as an undercurrent is a part of this too. So maybe a kidney cleanse could help, you know, for instance, if there is a lot of, you know, again, we've all dealt with a lot of grief in our lives, right? Again, it's part of the human nature. What we have to learn here. Forgiveness, right? But if it's working through, again, any of the shadow work, whether you already have or you're just trying to get rid of the residual, then I suppose, you know, especially if you're just if anyone's just beginning this process, then it may be helpful to work from the kidneys to the gallbladder. I hope that makes sense. I'd say people are probably going to be taking care of their bodies more this year too. And maybe a part of that, although physically, and I see in this material realm, but also this astral body is interesting, you know. I was talking with my really amazing man this morning, and I was asking his thoughts on it, and he was like, you know, I guess your astral body, as it's Jupiter, can be like another dimension, or like a possible you know. What kind of world are you wanting to create? Okay, I'm going to say that's that. I hope this was helpful. My notes are always, they're like organized, but so Notebooks are funny. What do your notebooks look like? Okay. Yeah, and if any of you would like to share your thoughts on what you think or something you know about, for instance, like an herb that's really good for any of these organs or what have you, please feel free. You know, there are actually some rad people on here that do, like there's a homegirl here, Tessa, that does Qigong, which is awesome. You know, it's free. You can learn. That's the cool thing about this place, right? The place that we are now is we can really be inspired and learn. It's just available to us. You know, you want to learn how to do something, there it is. And it's pretty neat. I'd also say, lastly, I keep seeing this word vision and planning, and someone talked about this. Who talked about this in January? Maybe Gemini, actually. But yeah, vision board. Vision board, maybe that would be helpful, you know? Or maybe just like a little altar to this year or something like that might be fun. However you want to express it and putting your energy into it, you know? I'd say getting to know the trees, to things that connect again to that wood are helpful. You know, really, because like even this desk was a beautiful tree, you know, and now it's here to help us like hold something, and so we can create this here. So awesome. All right, that's it. I love you so much. Thank you for being a part of this place. It's so awesome to connect. Oh, one last thing. Well, those of you still here, you get an extra bit. Forgot this note. As Pluto's moving into Aquarius too, and this is Aquarius time when this whole thing is like starting. Aquarius, as well as Aquarius's ruler Uranus, according to Mr. Cornell, it rules over ether. And I feel like that's very interesting in connection to this Jupiter astral body, which goes into the wooden dragon, and therefore back into the liver. Maybe there will be, yeah, we'll leave it like that. Something to think about too. You know, remember, the ether or whatever you deem, you know, because we have help in this physical world to make changes happen. And we also have help in invisible places, you know. If you, for instance, you believe in other dimensions, maybe your other you can help you. You know, maybe there's another you that wants to do what you're trying to do that's already done it, and you can, that information is available to you, you know. So, all right, now that's that. Happiest now, happy February. Speaking of that, February readings, I've done 6 out of the 12, but I'm not rushing it this much this month. I'm just doing small steps here, one at a time. So those will be out soon. All right. Happiest now. I love you so much. And have fun in this year, this wooden dragon year. You know? I feel like it's going to be really creative, which is so lovely. All right. Peace out.